So I want to ask you this, which is, I think, a question a lot of people in the Democratic Party are asking. Do you still see a path to the nomination? Obviously, you're behind the delegates. It looks like a very hard path. And if not, why are you remaining in the race?
Well, we're about 300 delegates behind. Biden has 1,200. We have 900. There is a path. It is admittedly a narrow path. But I would tell you, Seth, that there are a lot of people who are supporting me. We have a strong grassroots movement who believe that we have got to stay in order to continue the fight, to make the world know that we need Medicare for all, that we need to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, that we need paid family and medical leave, one of the crises that we're dealing with right now, that we must address climate change and education, all the issues that we have been talking about. Campaigns are an important way to maintain that fight and raise public consciousness on those issues. So that's, I think, one of the arguments we're going forward.
Basically, Bernie Sanders, to the chagrin of establishment Democrats and centrist Democrats and the people who are on the Joe Biden's campaign, whatever the hell they are, to the chagrin of all those people, Bernie Sanders is staying in the race. They are desperate for Sanders to get out this race because, let's be honest, in regards to having the conversation on the issue of the coronavirus, Joe Biden has been utterly, abysmally pathetic. I mean, he's unable to articulate basic thoughts. He's unable to go extemporaneous off the top of his head and just kind of talk. When he didn't have his notes or a teleprompter, he absolutely entirely just fell apart. He is a wisp of a man, and that wisp of a man is running in a contest that he is ill prepared to actually go through. Sanders, articulate, strong, straightforward in explaining his point of view, altogether there mentally. He absolutely wants it, thirsty for power in this particular case because he wants to operationally use it night and day. The public, when you're looking at policies, they agree with this guy. By the same token, that same public has been so beaten down and deadened from the standpoint of their imagination when they're looking at what they believe is possible and what people would even vote for. They end up with the guy who's riddled potentially with dementia. Not to mention a flagrant liar on top of it. Sanders is staying in the race. And I hope you heard his point as to why. Look, I have various policies that I want to get accomplished. There are various things that I want to get done. And a campaign and having a race and running in the race is a great way for that to happen. Now, Joe Biden has come out and said, yeah, we're not going to have, I don't know about any more debates. I just want to focus on the coronavirus, meaning he's trying to end the race. Here's the catch. If roles were reversed, no one would think twice about Joe Biden staying in this race. And not just nobody would think twice about Joe Biden staying in this race. When every last one of those Democrats were on stage and they asked, would you go for a brokered convention if Bernie Sanders is a nominee? Every last person said yes. Meaning Elizabeth Warren didn't have a snowball's chance in hell to even win her own state. Nobody said anything about Warren continuously staying in the race through Super Tuesday in order to ding Sanders. Biden, Warren, Buttigieg, all of those people that were on that stage literally said we are willing to go to a brokered convention, something that we know we will end up losing because of what it would do. We don't care. We're willing to do that. And nobody thought that was weird, strange, or odd at all. Sanders, who's 300 points behind Joe Biden with how many states left? Ohio, Georgia, Puerto Rico, Alaska, Hawaii, Louisiana, Wyoming, Wisconsin, Connecticut, Delaware, Maryland, New York, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Kansas, Indiana, Nebraska, West Virginia, Kentucky, Oregon, Virgin Islands, District of Columbia, New Jersey, New Mexico, and South Dakota. He's 300 points down. There's still nearly half of the states. I think there's a little bit more than half of the states left to go. Are his chances great? No. But are his chances nil? Also, the answer is, of course, no. We're in the middle of a crisis where the top person for the Democratic ticket can't articulate words. He can't talk. He's out of it. He's sleepy, and that's to put it mildly. Joe Rogan described him as being on a massive amount of edibles that he's just whacked out of his mind. I don't think so. I think he's just losing his mind, and he is not up to this task. Now, the problem is that the establishment Democrats don't care whether Joe Biden is up to the task. The issue was stopping Sanders, which they were able to do with the help of essentially Warren and the rest of the party lining up against his interests, not to mention the media space and all this other stuff. But in this very particular instance, he still has chances. We're in the middle of a crisis. In that crisis, the lead candidate can't articulate words, barely knows where he is, and can't continue his thoughts. On top of being in that particular crisis, the President of the United States is taking action, or let's say inaction, that is going to cause the deaths of hundreds of thousands, if not millions. The public may not necessarily blame Trump right now, but at some point, the public may turn around and blame the political space, A, for giving that corporate bailout, while all of those people who have rent to pay, food to pay, dealing with healthcare and all of this other stuff, they're left to their own devices with $1,200 from the government, while that same government gives $4.5 trillion in capital to the oligarchs. It's utterly astonishing. At some point, those people need to hold this political system accountable for that. Both parties, not just one party or the other. Joe Biden is in a bad spot. Now, the catch here is that his group of people want Sanders to get out the race because Joe Biden is in that bad spot. And they know that Joe Biden could still fall apart, which is why they're so adamant of Sanders to drop out. Again, roles reversed, this would never come up if Joe Biden was behind Sanders by 300 points. They would still be ticking along in this particular race, taking every opportunity they can to ding him. Sanders says, I'm not going anywhere. Here's the catch. Sanders has hurt his own chances in this based on the way that he's run this race. Because he gave over all support right off the bat, you gave away any of your ability to get leverage. On top of giving away your ability to get leverage, now when you need your supporters to back the guy who you may not necessarily want, but you think he's better than the other guy, you don't even have leverage with your supporters now because you didn't get any concessions from the other side because you were willing to give over your allegiance and your support willy-nilly without getting anything in return for it. That hurts you in a process like this where you need to get political concessions out of Joe Biden if you have any chance of getting your lefty supporters to back the guy who's losing his mind. And right here, they don't plan on giving anything. You heard at the debate when they asked Joe Biden, what do you plan on giving Sanders supporters to get their backing? What did Joe Biden say? I'm going to get Sanders to go and tell those people to vote for me. Basically, nothing. This is the article from The Hill where they were making the point about Joe Biden wanting Sanders people to get out the race, wanting Sanders out the race. I think he should get out, one Biden aide said. It's a lost cause for him and everybody knows it. If you really care about beating Donald Trump, you'd get out and consolidate the party in what was already a very stressful time for the nation. It's not helpful for anyone for him to stay in, period. Oh yeah, that has nothing to do with you backing Joe Biden. That has everything to do with you caring about the nation, totally. The aide also said that Sanders is unlikely to win more policy concessions from Biden by remaining in the race. I don't think he can push Biden any more to the left than he's gone, the aide said. But what he can do is solidify support and make sure we didn't have another 4 years of Donald Trump. The longer he stays in, the worse it looks. At a certain point, it looks selfish and self-centered. I agree that Bernie Sanders is selfish and self-centered, but not in the way that they're trying to articulate it. Sanders should know that Biden's chances of beating Trump are nil. Assuming for the moment that Trump doesn't get blamed for the issues associated with the coronavirus. If Sanders knows that, then not being pretty strong with Joe Biden, not being strong with the Democratic Party, not withholding his support for policy concessions, not hitting Joe Biden on issues of mental degradation, on issues of his ability to actually do the job, on his policy issues, on his lying, not going to the bat like that. Yes, he did that because he was buddies with Joe Biden, which is why I say, yeah, Sanders is a selfish prick for that. By the same token, he's not selfish in the way that this article is saying for staying in the race. Sanders' best bet is to stay in the race. And whether the Democratic Party knows it or not, their ability to get his supporters is connected to him staying in the race. Push him out and you will have no chance of conning these lefties into voting for you. Whoopi Goldberg is one of those Biden supporters that wants Sanders out the race. And this is not the lovable Guinan that haunted the bar at 10 Forward on Star Trek, Next Generation. This is the remnants of that, who was sitting on The View, basically browbeating and being mean to Bernie Sanders for remaining in the Democratic process. Joe Biden hasn't won anything yet. You're supposed to have 1,990 votes. And Whoopi Goldberg is basically telling Bernie Sanders, you need to get the fuck out the race. She doesn't say it in those terms, but basically that's the spirit of that questioning. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support PayPal, Patreon. This is utterly atrocious. Now, I don't know why Bernie Sanders continues to subject himself to hostile interviews like this. I have no idea. If I was Sanders, you wouldn't catch me dead on The View. You wouldn't catch me anywhere near any of these people. These people are nuts. And for the most part, they are just creatures of the Democratic Party. Why on earth would you continuously subject yourself to the likes of Whoopi Goldberg? I have no idea. And yet, for whatever reason, Sanders finds himself over and over again sitting with these particular women. Let's listen to Sanders defend himself against a rabid Whoopi Goldberg. Get the fuck out the race, Bernie.
To stay in this race for president because you believe there is a path to victory. I want to know what that path is, because this feels a little bit like it did when you didn't come out when Hillary Clinton was clearly the person folks were going for. So can you explain what?
So, a few points. This feels like when you didn't get out the race when Hillary Clinton stayed in that fucking race with Obama. This is why I really wish he's more aggressive on some of this stuff, because I think part of his problem when he's having these interviews is he takes so much shit from the opposition when he's dealing with this stuff, as opposed to taking more of a foot down response to this. Hillary Clinton stayed in that race with Obama all the way to the end, even making the argument that, hey, you never know what can happen. I mean, this is the first black person running for office in this way and this close to the office. Anything could happen. I mean, Bobby Kennedy. Meaning, invoking this notion that Obama could be assassinated. So she's, better stay in the race. Hillary Clinton had, even in that context, you had a larger number of people who decided to not vote for Obama than Sanders supporters who decided to not vote for Clinton. Meaning you had more Bernie supporters that turned around and voted for Hillary Clinton than you had Clinton supporters that turned around and voted for Obama. I am not taking a lesson from any Democrat on this type of question of why don't you get out the race. This is a democratic process. When Joe Biden wins the race will be over. What did they say about the broker convention? Well, I mean, it's the Democratic rule, right? Well, all right. We're back to the Democratic rule. The race will continue. It is not your place. You don't have standing to ask him when is he getting out the race.
Why you're still in the race and what this path is that you see?
One of the reasons, that's not quite accurate. I worked as hard as I could for Hillary Clinton. But the reason there is a path.
Bernie, just so we're clear, you worked for Hillary, but it took you a very, very long time to hop in, and your people also. It took a very long time for them to hop in. So when I say that, that's what I'm talking about.
Well, I don't accept that characterization. But the point is, people have a right.
Why are you still in the race?
People have a right. Last I heard, people in a democracy have a right to vote, and they have a right to vote for the agenda that they think can work for America, especially in this very, very difficult moment. We are assessing our campaign, as a matter of fact, where we want to go forward. But people in a democracy do have a right to vote. And right now, in this unprecedented moment in American history, I think we need to have a very serious discussion about how we go forward. And one of the things that I am working on with other members of the Senate and Congress is a new stimulus package, which not only makes sure that all of our people in this crisis have health care, but also that they continue to receive their paycheck. we have got to understand where we are at. And right now is April 1st. It is likely possible there are millions of people who cannot pay their rent, cannot pay their mortgage.
Yes. But wouldn't it be smarter for you to continue on that path to make sure that gets done?
Well, we are doing it. Believe me, I am doing it. Our nature of our... I'm sitting in my house right now. I'm not holding a rally in Wisconsin because of the nature of campaigns. But right now, what I am primarily focusing on with other members of the Congress is a new what we call a coronavirus 4 stimulus package, which will guarantee that every worker in America continues to receive his or her paycheck, that states and cities get the kind of revenue they need to maintain their payroll and take care of the work that they have got to do. What I am very worried about is that people cannot afford
yes?
Well, you know,
your plan is to
said that we are, well, for the 4th time.
You're assessing.
We are assessing.
Okay, all right.
We are assessing.
Very good. Sarah, you want to...
Wow, she is utterly cantankerous. She is utterly cantankerous. Like, you know, Sanders, I wish this is kind of what I mean when I say I wish he's more strident and push back on this stuff as opposed to being uber polite and dealing with somebody who's not being uber polite to you. She's being rude and indignant and basically trying to tell him to get out the race. And he's being very polite and trying to explain something to which he shouldn't be trying to explain at all because she doesn't give a shit about his answer. The entire point of this interview was to tell him to get out the race. She didn't care about his answer. He had already decided that he was going to stay in the race. She already knew he was going to stay in the race. The entirety of this was, why are you staying in this race? Yeah, you should have pushed back on that much harder than that. I'm not going to take a lesson from people who are backing the Democratic Party when Hillary Clinton stayed in that race all the way to the end. That's the first point. And yeah, I'm staying in the race because this other guy's healthcare plan is going to leave millions of people uncovered when mine is, and you have this guy who's still against Medicare for all in the middle of a pandemic. Yes, you get stronger in pushing back on this stuff if you're going to subject yourself to these particular interviews, and there is nothing wrong with being indignant with somebody who's being entirely indignant to you. I want to make another point about this. You get stepped on like this because of the weakness in the campaign. You get stepped on in this way because of the weakness in the campaign. You should have never did an interview with The View after the last time you were on that particular network. And beyond the point of being on The View or any of these other networks, your issue is political and getting certain political things accomplished, even in the context of losing the race as a whole. Meaning, even if you don't find that quote-unquote narrow path in order to win this race, if you would have stuck to your guns in the beginning and not just give over immediate support, and even now, you should do an about face on that and say, look, of course I'm going to go and back, Joe Biden if Joe Biden wins this thing. But look, it would be a lot better if the Democratic Party was given some level of policy concessions that would inspire my base of supporters to vote for him. Otherwise, it becomes a difficult choice for him. Now, right off the bat, saying something like that entirely neuters your original assessment or your original position in real terms of you going out saying, I'm going to back the other candidate. No, you haven't repudiated it, but in real terms, you kind of have. Because ultimately, you've just added a standard that all of your supporters is going to recognize as a standard that the Democratic Party is either going to reject or accept. And if it rejects it, they're going to get far less people than would have otherwise been there, even if you go out and try to support the party. I hope you understand what I mean. One claims power. The other one is shucking and jiving and begging people to vote for Biden. The one that claims power gives you more bang for your buck in a sense of what you may be able to get accomplished from your political objectives. But on top of that, it also forces concessions. Or you leave that base by itself. But one way or the other, the Democratic Party would have to make a choice on what it wants to do. Do you want these guys, in which case you give up X? Or do you say, fuck them, and we're going to try to find these votes elsewhere and just accept this loss? It's their choice. Now, my point is, one is far stronger than the other. And if you indeed is looking at Biden and you're thinking, okay, I would prefer Biden over Trump, your pathway to do that is literally through strength, not through weakness. I hope you understand what I mean. The only way you're ever going to get political concessions is if the Democratic Party believes that they're just going to utterly lose. That their current playbook over the last 40, 50 years of effectively choosing some regular hack and then shaming ill-begotten lefties into voting for that particular hack. Well, what happens when that's not the playbook anymore? What happens when you get a contingent of the left that is organized, that has a very specific interest in regards to policy objectives that it wants to accomplish, makes those demands in regards to the policy perspective, and basically says, if you want this election, you have to come to this particular point. Now, yes, I would have wished Sanders ran this race differently, and yes, I would have wished Sanders, even right now, came out and said something like that. Considering the browbeating that he took for Whoopi Goldberg, that probably will not ever take place. But if your objective, your honest objective, is to either win or at the very least to get policy concessions, this is not the way to do it. Your ability to harness your base in order to vote for some kind of random hack boils down to whether or not that base believes is getting something for that vote, meaning getting policy concessions. If you can't make that particular point, make that particular argument, and hold that particular position in your negotiations, then nothing is going to come about you getting those people over in sufficient numbers. That's my estimate. I could be entirely wrong on that, but that's the way I view it. All right, I'm going to end this because this has gone a little bit long. Let's see, who's here? What is that? Zeno Norman. Zen Norman. All right. Leave a comment, Zen Norman. Rob R. Hey JT, radio show cool, but I love the videos the most. Oh, thank you, R. Yeah, this is my normal domain, so yes, agreed. Darren Levy, Sanders is doing a Corbyn, being more loyal to the party and his friends rather than the supporters who wanted a revolution that he claimed to have stood for. Yes. That's why I say selfish prick. Like, if I need to save my family, say for the moment somebody breaks into my house, and as they break into my house, I have a shotgun that's sitting on the floor. I load it with shells and I pump 2 in the chest of the attackers who are in the house. Now, I am perfectly okay with doing this because my family is on the line. It's not so much that I enjoy offing people, but it is one of those things where between not offing those people and my family or myself getting killed or harmed or injured and offing them, clearly the offing them is that much more of a better alternative. By the same token, that extreme wouldn't necessarily be somewhere you would go to just because somebody stepped on your tennis shoes. Like, your reason for doing things informs to some degree the energy and what you're willing to do in pursuit of getting those things accomplished. If you run out and tell people you're looking for a revolution and you want a political revolution and people need to stand up and fight the billionaire class and the oligarchs are buying out politics and we're going to fight the billionaires and the entertainment industry and the media industry and we're going to fight all of these guys. If you say that to me and you tell me that climate change is an existential threat, you tell me that 500,000 people are going bankrupt each year because they can't pay for the healthcare bills, you make the point that 80% of the people in our population, in our society, is living paycheck to paycheck, meaning perpetually vulnerable, that the wages haven't necessarily gone up despite the numbers of productivity have gone up and despite the amount of money that the 1% have been garnering. Those things are emergencies. If you make the case to me that 95% of the income gains under the last Democratic president went to the top 1%, that means that I know under the Republican president, it's going to be that much higher. Meaning it may all go to the top 1% after Trump pushes through his particular policies. But that's only 5% different than the Democrat, the one that was actually supposed to be representing the interests of the left. Meaning, if you are pushing for a political revolution, your plight is against both parties, not just one or the other. And in being against both parties, the front person for that party, everybody in that party lined up to take you out. The front person for that is literally the representative of the billionaire class. When Bloomberg got out that race, he got out that race because whether Joe Biden takes it, whether he takes it, whether Trump takes it, doesn't matter. The issue was to stop Sanders. That was the issue. Joe Biden is perfectly acceptable from the standpoint of Bloomberg. It would allow him to keep his billions. It would allow him to make that much more. No issue. Meaning Joe Biden is the person in that race that is the front person for the billionaire class. He's the party of Wall Street at that point, the party of big oil. And you've just told me that climate is an existential threat. This guy over here who's a representative of big oil, you're telling me now he's your buddy. And because he's your buddy, the existential threat stuff doesn't matter as much. Meaning the fact that our climate is going to shit, the fact that all of these people are going bankrupt, the fact that tens of thousands of people die each year because they don't necessarily have access to health care, the fact that people are living paycheck to paycheck while other people get massively wealthy. None of that stuff matters in comparison to Joe Biden being your buddy. Do I have a bit of rage on this? Fuck yes. Fuck yes. Because if you're going to make this rhetoric, then you need to follow through with that. Meaning this notion of Joe Biden being your buddy, I'm sorry, just shouldn't apply. Ultimately, people are giving you hundreds of millions of dollars to be their champion on this stuff. And Joe Biden, who is literally representing the other classes against all of your policy priorities, every last one of them, going so far as to say, yes, I would literally veto Medicare for all if a House and a Senate passed it. They give you no respect like this because you don't command any respect in this case. And I don't mean that to be insulting. I just mean that to be true. Ultimately, respect in politics is not something that's given. It's not something that's handed over. The very fact that lefties were willing to fall for the you have nowhere else to go argument effectively invited those lefties to be taken advantage of because of their cowardice. That's just true. It's the way politics works. There's nothing given in this. It's not done out of the kindness of your heart. It's done because you have some level of political leverage that you can use in order to get what you want. In the case of Sanders, the political leverage that he has had back in 2016 and back in 2020 is the number of people that are willing to shear their legs off and crawl on bloody stubs to the poll to make that vote for Sanders. But he never leverages the mob. Meaning, he doesn't leverage that to get concessions. It's just one of those items of, look, you're going to get my support regardless. Thank you. That means we don't have to give you anything. Which is why when Joe Biden was asked on that stage, what are you willing to give Sanders supporters? Nothing. Nothing at all. Why do I have to give him anything? He's already told me he's going to support me. Same thing in this article, where the article makes the point, look, Sanders is not going to push Biden any further to the left than he's already pushed him. Meaning, he's not going to get anything out of it. Why? Why would they give him anything if they already have his support? I hope you understand what I mean. The weakness in this particular case invites being taken advantage of. This is the political law of the jungle to some degree. In Sanders' case, I understand he believes that Joe Biden is his friend. Joe Biden is not his friend. Joe Biden has very clear political objectives. He knows what he's representing, and he's putting a knife in Sanders in order to make that work, working in tandem with the rest of the party, including Elizabeth Warren, to effect that win. Now, if your name is Sanders, you should have known that. One, you should have prepared for that and been willing to do what was necessary if you're going to go with the revolutionary argument. Two, and does that mean he doesn't necessarily have the courage of his convictions? Maybe. I mean, like, I don't, there's just an unreconcilable difference in the way that he talks versus the way that he acts. That's all. It's not so much that I don't accept that Sanders has brought this conversation a magnificent way in a very short period of time. It's not that I don't accept that this notion of Medicare for all and expansion of Social Security, Green New Deal, all that stuff was put on the map in large part because of the rhetoric that he's used in these two campaigns to kind of bring this stuff into the limelight. Agreed. But if I am being honest, I am seething with a certain degree of rage over it's the opportunity of a fucking lifetime. Like, it's an opportunity in the context of history over 50, 60 years where you get a viable candidate on the left that has the potential to actually win. Like, it's that digs into me. It's one thing if I thought it was impossible. He could have never accomplished this. But I don't think that. I don't think that at all. He ran this race with guardrails. He ran this race literally with the idea that I'm not going to run attack ads. I'm not going to run attack ads. Hey, what if you, can't get the vote of a particular demographic just because of your rhetoric? Meaning just because you're saying certain things, you can't get them to buy into that because of other prejudices that may be out there regarding you. What are you going to do then? I'm just going to give rhetoric harder. Is it possible that you may have to actually put the knife in the guy in order to drain his numbers? Nope, I'm above that. My name is Bernie Sanders. What is your objective? Is your objective to remain his buddy? Is your objective to win and get political concessions for all of the problems and the issues that you yourself have identified in the context of this country? And the fact that he couldn't do that burns. It just burns. It fucking burns. Marcus Will, $49 million a month buys you a friendship with Joe Biden. Shaking my head. Shaking your head is right. Shaking your head is right. That's the thing that I think is weird with this. Trudy, he did stop calling Joe his friend a month ago. Fair enough, Trudy. Fair enough. Fair enough. Thank God for small miracles. But I know you're kind of joking with that, Trudy, but you see my point, right? Like, look, I still have Sanders poster on my wall, so this is not an attack Sanders stuff or a hit Sanders thing. I'm just being very honest in the way I see it and the way I feel about it. I grew up playing competitive chess from the time I was like 12 years old. My framing of the world in regards to a competition, which is all politics is that you do what's necessary within the context of the rule set to win. And depending upon what you need to accomplish, that's the amount of energy that you put into it and being willing to put into it. That also sets your own guardrails in regards to what you think is too far based in context of what you need to accomplish. For the first time in 50 or 60 years, you've literally had the potential to upend a political system that you have identified for for 50 years, almost a half a century, as fucking over the population. And to not being able to do that, it feels like a letdown. It feels like having the wind knocked out of you. It's not even like that you lost per se. It's almost that the guy just didn't go out there and throw a punch. It's the most bizarre feeling ever when you're looking at politics. When Obama ran against Hillary Clinton, that was a smash mouth campaign that didn't hurt Obama at all. In fact, you can make a case that it strengthened him going into the other election. When Clinton ran against Sanders, it wasn't Sanders that hurt her. Everything that Sanders hit her with would have came up regardless. The catch is you need to know whether or not your candidate can sustain those attacks, which is the reason why you have a primary. It inoculates the candidate, and you also get an idea on how this candidate is going to fare when it gets into the general. By Sanders, again, trying to be a nice guy, not bringing up the email thing, it was allowed to be used in the general election with a devastating impact. You would have known that impact if you would have dealt with that in the primary. Now you have Joe Biden, who nobody wants to bring up the cognitive glitches. No one wants to bring up how he's out of sync. He can't get his words out. Nobody wants to bring up how horribly mismanaged he's been in this crisis. Nobody wants to bring it up. Nobody even wants to make the point that the reason why Donald Trump's approval level is what it is because how weak and feckless Democratic opposition has been to Trump and the Republicans in running the ball on the issue with their response to the coronavirus. Your candidate is just that weak. That's why you're having trouble getting any kind of inroads with Trump on this. It's just aggravating. This election has gone awry. I just put it that way. And yeah, it's massively aggravating. Like, share, subscribe.